People ask me about him all the time. What was Lenny Dykstra like? I say, you know what? In the locker room, he was very quiet. And they look at me like, no, he's running around yelling and screaming. I said, no. I said, he basically came in, sat in his locker, and spit Dr. Pepper on his shoes to clean them, and didn't say a whole lot. Like, he would come up and start to tell you a story, then he'd leave and go in the training room, and then an hour later come back, and you say, hey, Lenny, finish that story. And he's like, well, what are you talking about, dude? I don't, what was I talking about? I'm like, okay.
The dude was an experience. You know, the dude would be an experience even if it had nothing to do with baseball. I mean, you could run into Lenny, I'm sure, away from the field and come away a little bit dazed and confused as to just what exactly just happened. But, you know, Lenny, I think, was, if there's such a definition as a creature of habit or a guy that's superstitious or has his routine or needs to do things, you know, consistently, as far as preparation goes, it was Lenny. I mean, you know, I think Franklin that year sent him like over 500 pairs of batting gloves because, you know, if he made an out or he didn't like the way they felt, they were in the trash.
I used to pick all these new gloves out of the can for my son Vince, who was young at that time, and take them home. I mean, they didn't even have any pine tar on them yet.
But Lenny was very superstitious. Nobody could touch his bat if he was hitting good. I remember a pitcher picked it up one time during BP, and he looked over there and he said, whose bat's that? And he said, it's yours. He says, give me that thing. And he went nuts, you know. It was like, this is sacred. Don't touch this while I'm going good. If I'm 0 for 4, you can use all my bats. When I get 2 or 3 hits, I don't want you to touch anything. But he would wear the same undershirt if he was hitting good. Obviously, if he wasn't, he'd be changing, but very superstitious.
Well, you know, in this game of baseball, man, it's a great game, but it can also humble you quick. I mean, and you get to the point where you can't stop it. You know, something you don't get a hit, you think it's because you had your chew or your batting gloves on a different way, or you wore the wrong undershirt, and so, you know, especially when you're winning, you know, you combine trying to be successful not only as an individual, but then, you know, when your team's winning, you combine. So I had dual superstition angles going.
It was an amusement park. It was hands down the funnest baseball environment I've ever been around because there were no boundaries as to what you could say, what you could do. You get 25 guys with over 75% incredibly immature together, you know, for 180 days, and there's stuff has to happen.
That cast of characters, you know, they were just so much fun to be around. And I'll never forget when Joe Carter beat us in Game 6. We fly back to Philadelphia. Now they're like, that team really captured the imagination of the Phillies fans and the public. There were like several thousand fans to greet us even after we had lost the World Series. And I'm walking off the plane behind Larry Anderson. And LA's doing like this. I said, LA, what are you doing? We didn't, what's the V for victory? We didn't win. He said, no, that means we're number 2.